In this video, I'm going to break you down the art of making a plan. So every successful plan has a behind art of it. So why most of people plans were not succeeding? The reason is they were not under the process of art. Basically, most of the people were doing when they want to make a plan, they just define the goals and they aim to gain the outcomes. So they keep rushing and forwarding and processing on that process, just the goals and the outcomes. But a successful plan has several steps under of a kind of a artful work. It's just an art. It's not just only a systemic approach. It's kind of an artful thing. So if you want to become a more successful plan creator, or if you want to make your plan more successful, or else you want to make a successful plan, you needed to successfully understand the behind art of it. Right. So I'm going to show you some of the tips that you needed to improve that area. So I'm working as a psychological lecturer in Sri Lanka, the Asian context, and also I'm a psychological counselor working with the clients. So I will share you some of the tips. The first thing is the art of making a plan. It's basically it's a systemic approach. So what does it mean? Every plan has a systemic flow. It's contributed step and step into that flow. So in this systemic approach, the first step is the art of making a plan. The first step is defining the goals. So most of the people, when I am asking most of the people, what's your goal? They haven't any oriented, a specific, a measurable goal. The goal is what? It's huge. It's not specific. It's not narrowed down to gain the success. So when you're making a plan, you want to process a narrowed down, a pointed out, a specific goal. That's how the defining goal part was working. Right? This is very important. So think about like this. If you want to start a YouTube channel, so you needed to define what is the specific niche that I want to target and what is the specific audience that were watching my videos. So kind of like that, you need to define your goals properly. That is the first step of art of making a plan. So I'm moving to the second step, right? The second step is, right, it's outlining the steps, right? It's also, it also mean by some steps, right? Yeah, outlining the steps. But yeah, so after you defining the goals, now you know what is the specific thing and what is the narrowed down thing to gain, right? That's good. So after, to get that goal, to achieve it, you needed to flow through it. So the flows were needed to under creating some steps. It looks like a staircase, just step by step, right? So think about like this. So if you want to create a YouTube channel, so what are the steps? So you needed to what? You needed to script it, you needed to make a thumbnail on it, and you needed to do a proper research, and you needed to make the research data into the descriptions and the keywords things. So likewise that the goal is kind of one thing, but under the goal you needed to break down some of the several steps to gain that goal, right? So that is the second step, right? So most of the people think like this. So just noted the goals, I can create the steps, and now I can achieve the goal. But That's totally wrong. There are two things you needed to be considered after creating the steps. After you creating the steps, the highly important thing is allocating the resources. That is the third thing, allocating the resources. So now you know what is the goal and what I'm targeting, and then you know what are the steps behind to gain that goal. But behind that, you needed some of resources. So it can be knowledge, so it can be a equipment, so it can be a resource person, kind of like that. So what I get the example as creating a YouTube channel, behind that, think on making a plan. Behind the art of making the plan, while you're thinking, you needed a proper equipment, the proper gadgets, proper lighting setup, a camera setup. So behind that, you can see the resource allocation is highly important. So that's why you want to make a proper art of behind the proper art of making a plan. The thing is, the very important and the secret thing is, you need to consider how I allocate these resources to gain my goals. So before you starting a thing, before you're starting anything, so it can be a business or any kind of like that, but you need to properly understand how I'm going to allocate my resources. And there are also one thing that also hidden before the outcome process, before the systemic outcome process. There are also one hidden secret thing. So now you know, first thing is defining the goal, and second thing is you creating the steps. Now you know the third step is now you know to make a plan of allocating the resources. And the next thing, what it is, it also a hidden secretful thing. It is you needed to know what are the challenges, right? That's why it's very important. So now you know how the goals is and the steps and the resources, but when you started it, what will happen? You will begin a ton of challenges. Some may be huge, some may be small, but I can say surely you will begin a ton of challenges. That's how it looks like. Right. So before you getting the challenges, you needed to define what I will be going to face. So what maybe the challenges maybe look like. So we can't define all the challenges we getting after before we working on something, but there are some of the challenges while we working on that. That's true, I can understand. But before that, some of the challenges can be predicted. So that's why when you're making a plan, the behind art is you needed to master what are the challenges where things can be happen to you. So you can predict some of the challenges. So it may be truly helpful. Right. So after you defining the challenges, now the final step, it's the outcomes. So most of you can do it. After gaining the goals, you can properly define what are the outcomes maybe and how the outcomes were looking like that. Right? So, but the outcomes also needed to be realistic outcomes. So when I'm working as a life coaching part, so some of the entrepreneurships and some of the business personalities, what I noticed that the most of the people, when they're making a plan, their plan outcomes will look like non-realistic. They were not realistic plans. So we can imagine and we can break down some of the challenges and we can work on it. But when the starting up of a plan, when you're making a plan kind of a artful thing, you needed to make the plan outcomes more realistic. So otherwise, you are working not to a realistic outcomes. You are working to an unrealistic outcomes. So that's how the art of making a plan process, the systemic approach will looking like. So behind the systemic approach, there are key things you needed to mix up with the artful thing. So behind that, you needed to practice the patient. You needed to practice the mindfulness. You needed to practice the focus. So it's just an art. Think about you drawing an art, a painting, how it looks like. The incredible, the amazing paintings, the world number one paintings. What behind on that? The commitment. Behind the commitment have what? The patience, the curiosity. And silence. So, thank you so much and see you from another impactful, psychological, wisdomful video. Thank you.